All right, traders. Hey, welcome on back for another fantastic week of our Traders Talk workshop. Great to have all of our students and members just joining us here. Margaret, Nabil, so Kathleen just before, Roberto, Tim, Andrea, Leda, Eric, Michael, all of our students, perhaps not just inside our live trading room now, but students I was talking to just privately a moment ago, just on the side. Great to have all of our students just rejoining us back now. And on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Popping up lower left, as always. Be a friend, tell a friend, hit the subscribe and follow buttons respectively below. At Cyber Trading U is our handle, our Twitter, our X, our YouTube, our everything out there on internet. So make sure to follow us there. But I'll tell you what, before we begin and get into our usual banter here, our workshop Traders Talk, we have pretty much as good of an outlet on a week-to-week basis to cover the big talking points, the big moves within the market, and really otherwise how to utilize order flow, how to actually trade, not just a rah-rah, but real education, like as far as why this stock popped the way it did, or other trades that we had called out from this morning, right? Dave, great to see. Roger, great to see. All of our students as well, like we've said before. Now, quick heads up. Tomorrow, we had mentioned this in the morning. We mentioned this all throughout this week inside our live trading room. Of course, our students, you're already in the know. But for mainly everyone else, though, otherwise, non-students, or if you're just on social media, just make sure to register. Go right to this webpage here on the top left, cybertradingexpo.com. We'll hyperlink that in the chat board for YouTube and X and social media. But coming up tomorrow, T-minus 21 hours, 52 minutes, etc. We have a huge two-day presentation. Of course, Fausto, but even myself, but got the keynote speaker himself here, Tom Sosnov, formerly from Tasty Trade, now at lostdog.com. We got Jeff Hirsch, the man himself. I love seeing Jeff. Got Andrew Keene, haven't had him on in a long time. So Andrew's the man also. Got Jeff Gibby, Greg Capra. If I can untie my tongue, that would be great. John Hutchinson, all these great educators, analysts, gurus, mentors, traders, investors alike. So that will be tomorrow. Go right to this webpage here on the top left. Again, we'll link that for you folks on YouTube, social media as well. Just got to fill out your name, email, your phone number, but you will be good to go. If you can't catch it live, that is the only way that you can capture the recording. If you register for this event, at least we'll send out the recording via email at least afterwards. So again, we'll kind of link that for everyone in the chat coming up here just on YouTube. There we go. All right, now with that at least, let's go right into what we had talked about earlier this morning. A couple great trades that we had from earlier today. We'll get to Neo. We'll get to Neo here. It's a slow poke. I don't want to waste anyone's time, let alone the 51 minutes remaining we have left in this webinar. Let's go over to a couple more volatile trades. And even if they didn't make that pretty move up, well, why didn't they? Right? Why did they not make the big move? So that leaves us to begin with the HIMS trade. And, HIMS just from Friday last week. We talked about this from yesterday, this morning. Just the craziest pop right before the after hours finishes up for a Friday night going into a weekend. Unless if you're on the West Coast or unless if you're in Hawaii, you're probably out to dinner. You're probably in bed at that time, right? If you're on the East Coast, you're out to dinner. If you're on Central Time, you're probably doing a little dinner too, by the way. Listen, if you're over in Germany or Denmark or the UK, or a lot of our students just intercontinental, well, it's to say that you're probably already dead asleep at that point. You're not really seeing this move. Crazy pop that came out of thin air, out of nowhere. And with that, hey, you can't really beat yourself up for missing that. I beat myself up a hell of a lot more for stocks that, I'm attentive for, that I'm in the moment and in the present moment of being a trader, like 9:30 to 10:30. If I'm dilly-dallying and I miss a giant pop on something that I was interested in, or if I had the time to set up my levels and I just got lazy, that's on me. And I'll get pissed about myself on that. This you can't get upset about. And I say that because, there's speculation about like HIMS. Oh, it's going to short squeeze back up. We said that on Monday, right here on this day, March 2nd. We said that. But, we said it would be a day trade move. And this stock is, while very heavily shorted, and that could lead to a potential short squeeze. Well, there's a lot of stocks that are very heavily shorted in the stock market, right? Not just HIMS. Take a look at those charts. How are they doing? Why do you think that they're shorted to begin with? Because the company is not doing great. The company has not been doing great. The company has been weak. Think of it this way. Like my New York Football Giants, as we're not really in football season anymore. We're not really the greatest team. Would you bet your life savings on them to win the Super Bowl? Sure hope you don't. Who knows? Maybe in a few years, right? But you can't really do that with this type of stock. Now, with that, that's just where obviously we saw the news that came out on Friday, and HIMS led to that big squeeze because the short did have to cover. Roger, in on the HIMS trade. Oh, from this morning though, Roger, right? You got it from this morning though. Right. I'm just talking about the Friday after hours craziness that happened. But more or less though, I mean, how do you trade it from that point, right? How do you trade it from that point? Like after it makes this enormous pop on Friday, where do you go from this point here? Because I really wouldn't be as interested in trading it at 6 o'clock in the morning Monday. You got to wait till institutions open up and trade it themselves and wait to see support build, or at least wait to see a higher high and see the stock break out even further, right? So at least yesterday, what happened? Well, we'll go into Bookmap, we'll go into the levels, but point being is that, well, it didn't really do much of anything. It didn't really tank and fill the gap downward, didn't make lower lows too much. But in terms of looking for buying pressure, well, there's two forms of buying pressure that we always look for here on Bookmap, on level 3 otherwise. Those two forms of buying pressure are well, if we have a big fat iceberg order on the bid that can just pop up and it stays out there for a long time. We'll get to a stock coming on up here that ran well just before I killed it on, just before a few of our students I hope did, the UAMI stock. And that is a good example of that, that buying pressure. Now, though, there isn't really much of an iceberg that's like staying out here, at least, aside from this. What is this, 1888? The price, $18.88. Is it really going to drop all the way down that low? Aside from that, there's really nothing else that I like as far as buying pressure in terms of a bid, an iceberg on the bid. Now, what's the other form of buying pressure, though? There's two forms. Well, the other form, and keep in mind, if you're on social media, or even if you're just like a member in our trading room, if you're not like a full-time student yet, I'm just going to show this little slide from a class I teach. But this is just our phase 2 curriculum. We have 3 entire phases or parts of our curriculum that we teach throughout the course of the calendar year. So it's not just this little Traders Talk workshop where I have the chance to discuss this with you all. Students like Tim and Roger and Nabil and Uday, and most of us here, at least in our room, you've gone through our classes already, and you're continuing to. By the way, I appreciate you investing your time into that. Well, you realize that here, this stock is not breaking over any sell order. That's the other form of buying pressure, right? It's a matter of seeing the stock blast through the opposition, blast through the big sell orders out there. I mean, there's a sell 5. If that gets taken out, oh yeah, that would be great. But there's nothing here in pre-market that I'm a fan of. And after the market opens, there's no big selling order. There's no big sell order that gets taken out. There's no break over resistance, at least here. And I'm referring to the heat map levels, not just the little candles on the chart. Now, there is one thing though. Hey, what time do we expect reversals to happen at? Around 10:30, right? Well, right here at 10:30, for as much as this was dropping when the market opened up, well, it started to bounce. It held a higher low, and we had new support buying pressure here finally. That bid, and it stayed out there. Okay, great. That's excellent. So if anyone here tried taking this trade at 10:30 in the morning yesterday, not a bad thought. Just set a tight stop right below that $21 level. Well, first, it won't be tight if you chase the stock. So please make sure that you have an entry that's very close to, where that support is. Whole number level, 10:30 in the morning, reversal time. Make sure it's much closer to that than anything, so you can then have a tight stop. Set that stop right below 21 in that case. Now, though, aside from that one thought, I know it moves around. And I was looking for the squeeze up in the afternoon. I was looking for this to just pop, figure with higher lows. Give me something here. And we know that HIMS is a very volatile stock in a good way. Like it provides great opportunity, right? So if you were looking at this trade yesterday and was kind of hearing me kind of go over it, I was getting a bit frustrated with seeing this like not make that better pop. And of course, we know what happened with the SPY. The stock market popped going into the close yesterday. So, that could lead to a nice little push. But quite frankly, that's a little bit different. I want to go into that coming up even next. But let's continue with this review. It popped and dropped. It was disappointing. Big fat sell order showing up here in the after hours. So that doesn't help the cause for this to go up more. So all in all, there really wasn't like much strategically that I'm a fan of on this chart, aside from maybe the 1030 reversal. And even that, it was a tease. Now, this morning, is there any difference this morning compared to yesterday? Well, yes. And the difference here is that in this case, even in pre-market, it started to happen. There was a sell order out here, but the buyer stepped in and broke over it. And if it wasn't this one here, you could definitely start to see larger volume bars on the bottom. You start to see at least some volume getting filled in green. So there is some volume getting chewed through here by buyers. And with that, the stock obviously took off, right? So pre-market, there was a decent trade there. When the market opened up, though, at 9:30, you have this one area here, 2460-ish. There was a resistance. It got broken through essentially. I think that this is the order that filled it. So pretty much right at 2463, we'll just go with here. But hey, a lot of buying pressure. Blasted right over that. It ran. This could have provided an incredible support opportunity on a pullback. Now, this is finally a decent level for us to use for some sort of entry here when after the market opens up. There was a pre-market entry, but aside from that, at 9 o'clock in the morning, this was your next volume-based level. All right, well, if we're looking to see support build, and if we're looking to see the stock flip resistance to support, we don't want to just place the buy order out there. Well, why not? Well, what if it gets filled and then the stock just keeps dropping instantaneously? You might have your feet kicked up and expect support to hold perfectly, but if it doesn't, you're putting yourself in a very bad situation immediately out the gate. So let me ask Roger, Tim, Nabil, or all of our students here collectively, just, if you know, then just write it in the chat. If you're looking to see support try and build, and if you want to buy off support, there typically is something I look for when it comes to that type of entry. It's kind of a very tiny phrase I use. Very tiny phrase. It's not a full-blown Josh catchphrase, not a full-blown sentence. But you know what? Margaret first to the punch right there, and she's correct. Quick fingers from her, and she knows. Under and over. Yes, absolutely. Meaning when this pulls back down, if I'm looking to have this resistance effectively flip into a support, you want to see it nip under that level and right back over. Now, let's say if that does happen, okay, that could trigger or warrant a buy entry in the hope of seeing a slingshot. Now, one of my main catchphrases, whatever entry you take, breakouts, support flips like this here, when a stock breaks through a big level and we're jumping in, we take the trade, well, we better be getting a big move shortly after. So let's see. It ends up here under and over. This is at 9:33 in the morning, mind you. This is just early hours here. So it starts to do it on the cusp of the five-minute mark. And on top of that, obviously you see what you see here on the right side. About 100,000 share buy order showing up here. Oh my God, this is incredible. So you're telling me this thing made under and over, and then we have 100,000 share buy order showing up like that. Perfect. I love it. This could lead to an incredible run up here. Where is our next major resistance? Well, maybe 27. If this really wants to pump up, about 20,000, 21,000 shares at $27. There's about 16,000 shares at 26. Give that a little respect. But point being is that this is a sweet moment here to try and take the trade. Now, this is where, though, it looks great, smells great, but where is that big move shortly after, right? This is the perfect type of trade right now. But if it's not going to run going up, well, you have to ask why. Because it is that pristine of a setup, right? I know my levels. I know my resistance flip to support. I mean, yeah, we're like pretty much right at the 5-minute mark, a minute away. At least you're not entering on like candle number one. But it's just to say, though, that if you take this trade and set a tight stop, you're doing everything that you need to be doing here. But that does not pay the phone bill. That does not pay the dinner bill later on Friday night here this week. That will not pay rent. That will not pay your mortgage. That will not pay, grandchildren's tuition money, whatever it may be. That doesn't do much for us without the stock going up, 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 up. So the longer it doesn't do that, you kind of have to ask yourself, well, why? And you don't want to think too much about this without having your risk already in plan, without having your stop set already. But of course, if you're asking yourself why, it's basically to say, well, it's not me, it's the stock. If I know my levels and if I'm using strategy 100% correctly here and I have a tight entry and a tight stop, I'm not broken. The stock is. Think of it that way. And you do not want to be in this trade if it is going to be a broken, trade, a broken toy. I kind of compare it to like, little kids playing with like a toy. Well, you don't want to play with a broken toy, right? So it started to move up. Great. Excellent. Now, unfortunately, it didn't go up to 26, let alone obviously 27. So it made a lower high. Now, this is where, okay, like you can take whatever profit out that you have here. If you're in from 24.67, 24.70, if you get out at 25.20 on the drop, or if you get out at 25.04, that's money to start your day. I'm not going to really complain too much about that if it doesn't make that big move shortly after. Because, folks, what happens if it doesn't make a big move shortly after? Well, I guarantee you it's going to make a big move shortly after. Drop the G word there, actually. Normally, don't drop the G word. That's like a curse word when it comes to trading. But I guarantee you it's going to make a big move shortly after. Just not going up. So, came back down. Now, at least for today, for members in our trading room, you got to be there in pre-market. But I'll tell you, just use the little search bar on the top of the trading room chat there. You can kind of search what we're posting all throughout the day, catch up on the posts from the morning. But on the HIM stock, hey, I logged into the trading room. I think that was like my first call out. Let me show you this here. So post the watch list early. Rich was, posting up until 8:30. Now, pretty much right away when I jump in, like one of the first things I kind of comment on is from the end of yesterday. So this wasn't effective in yesterday's trading because it only showed up right at 4 o'clock. But again, also, we take a lot of time in our curriculum to teach this thoroughly in a 60+ minute class. It's shown in a few of them. But, we have the closing bell print. HIMS had a 4.5 million share print at the market close yesterday at 22.16. So where I was kind of complaining about, well, HIMS didn't really have great levels yesterday. I didn't see that big resistance getting broken over. Aside from 10:30 in the morning, it wasn't really much support. So that's where, hey, less is more, or actually, the easier it is on the graph, the better it is to use. That's what I'm trying to say there. So look at this big old spike at the market close yesterday, right? And even comparing that to like the previous spikes on HIMS from the trading day before that, the days before yesterday. I mean, this is almost triple the size. I mean, it is actually. It's more than triple the size compared to these. And of course, it's coming off of the big pop from Friday, news. I'm sure options volume trickles into that. I know. That's what we teach. We say that in class with how we kind of present this spike. But what's our whole philosophy here at Cyber Trading University? For all of us here right now inside our trading room, about 104 of us right now live. I want to see most of us kind of say this answer here. Of course, we love setting our stops tight. Of course, we we love being part of a team. That's also a big part of CTU. But what do we do? What's our philosophy? What's Fausto's campaign slogan if he ever decides to run? Follow the big money, right? You got to have more than 3 people in our chat answer that, by the way. Shout out to Tim, Wayne, Margaret, Bill right there as well. Definitely need more than 4 people writing that there. Everyone should know that instantaneously. Well, if that's the case, if our whole philosophy is to follow the big money, then what the hell is this all about? What do where is this at? What price did this get filled at, right? Why is this so much larger, bigger than everything else from, the past day, from the past 2 days, from the last week? So again, we teach this in class. It take a lot of time in the phase 2 course to go over it, more in private coaching. Traders talk, obviously, here too. I'll sprinkle it in. This is from the end of the day yesterday, 4 o'clock. This is about 4.5 million shares at 22.16. So at least today, what my thought was going into the open, my game plan, I was going to see if that 22.16 could become support. So I didn't trade it today. I didn't trade it at the open. I'm pointing out there could have been a good entry there from that 24.67-ish. But if it's not making higher highs, it's going to make a lower low, right? So it could have made money there. I didn't touch it from there. That's all right. But otherwise, though, if this could pull back today, I would love to see if we can get 22.16 for a bounce. Now, though, keep in mind, we always say, well, typically first test is the best test. Just like we say with resistance flipping into support, well, typically the first test is the best test to see that happen, right? Now, let's say like today, hypothetically, because we want everyone on social media to join us directly inside our live trading room. So otherwise, we're going to put this up here in just a bit. But hey, we're going to invite you to join us at the end of this workshop directly inside our trading room here coming up for a week. But with that, though, ultimately for our members on social media not joining us later on today, tomorrow, this week, etc., if you're just going to stay on YouTube, just remember that the more that a level keeps getting poked at, it's going to break. So where I tell you, I'm like, yeah, I'm interested in HIMS at 22.16. Well, it might bounce there at first. I would expect it to, in fact. But the more it keeps getting poked at without running, then it's probably going to break below it. The sellers are going to win the battle more. It's going to go lower from that point. So just remember, like this observation, this review, the comment I made about 22.16, that's a day trade call out, right? So actually, Nabil asked earlier. I think it was Nabil. One of our students was asking more or less just about different swing trades and hey, are there different swings that Fausto or myself kind of focus on? Of course, absolutely. We always say that verbally when we're on the microphones, or we will say it in the chat, like directly say the word, swing. I'm sorry, that was Uma that had asked that. My apologies. So, just to say, we will always, point out in the chat, like, hey, I'm looking at this for a potential swing, right? But when we go back to the long-term graph for HIMS, I'm not focused as much on the potential goal at the end of a short squeeze, meaning like, hey, what if it pumps up to 30? What if it pumps up to 40? What if this becomes the next GameStop? Can you believe that? You got people on like Twitter and like Reddit, like actually saying that. It's kind of crazy. It's like deja vu, or it's like one flew over the cuckoo's nest here. It's like the longer that you do this stuff, you realize, people are always going to be smoking the hopium. And unfortunately, if they don't know how to manage their trades, they are going to get blown to smithereens. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. Now, with that, what's the record of HIMS long term? And when I say long term, I can go back more and skew it and say, well, long term since 2023, it's doing great still. Yeah, but let's do like a 6-month look, 6 months to a year. So, lower highs, lower lows. It's not a good chart. So again, kind of bring it back to like the basic elementary like football type of reference. My New York Football Giants, are you putting your life savings on them winning the Super Bowl next year or this year coming up? I hope you don't. So that's just where you want to be more intelligent with swing trades comparative. You want to pick your shots better on a swing trade with looking at the long-term graph. So, hey, what if I catch a great day trade entry on HIMS? The thing runs up beautifully, and I have such a lead on the trade that I could scale some out and then try and flip some of those remaining shares into a swing trade. That is completely different compared to intentionally trying to swing trade a stock to swing trade a stock. Meaning, if the day trade that I'm in isn't really giving me that big of a lead, then I'm probably going to keep it a day trade and not, hold it recklessly overnight. But if I'm already up 5, 7, 8% on the common and it's closing near the highs, those rare instances where you have such an immediate lead on your trade, you could try and do that. But remember, A, that doesn't happen as often. And B, that's not necessarily the goal of what we're trying to do here. So if it happens, it happens. But otherwise, that's where, again, like HIMS, we'll see what happens this afternoon with that 2216. Or otherwise, hey, there could always be something that shows up that pops up out of thin air, a little support level kicking in here for the time being. Nothing that would make me pull the trigger immediately right now, but there might be something that shows up much larger today. Like earlier today, there was 200,000 on the ask. What if there's 200,000 on the bid? Right? That could sweeten the pot a little bit. Seeing this is like cute. That's nice. 56K, but we saw that earlier. We saw a lot of that earlier here, and otherwise at other price levels, not as big, but like here at 2320. So just to point out that I'd want to see something even larger to just jump in. So let it prove itself. Point being. Now, I will mention I've been like coding, I've been back testing, I've been building something on the side here during my non trading hours and work hours, etc. I got to step away from these bright computer screens. That's a separate note. But aside from that, though, Amy, what a trade this thing made today. And it wasn't on our morning list. It's just a great side list stock. I had zero intention on trading this going into the morning, and that's fine. We were focused on HIMS at first. We were focused on ATPC at first. We were focused on Rivian and NEO, a few others. It's all right. Now, this made a great move. Great push up, though. So if someone jumped in here at like 10 or a little at, doing great. Now, though, where I wanted to take an entry, I was kind of, testing something out. And I don't want to say much more than that because I love how, most students here do have a very curious mind. We're students at nature. We're students at heart. We want to, learn. We want to know. If I start yapping about this thing I'm back testing, it's going to just make you move away from level 3 and level 4, which I don't want you to do. So that's just where I'll tell you more when I want to tell you more. But point being, for this entry, it actually coincided so well with, well, big money. Real quick, look on the far right side column. Far right side column, CVP. Where do we have, what price do we have big volume spike? On the far, far, far right side column, that volume histogram. Right here, right? Look at that. 1050 sticking out like a sore green thumb. Hey folks, what do we nickname the green as? What type of pressure is that? Buying pressure. Wow. So lo and behold, without even my little thing on back testing, coding, building, whatever, I'm certainly not the sharpest tool in this shed to be coding, that's for sure. So it's been a struggle. But that aside, this is a great trade. A, because it's up to begin with. Who's winning the battle when the stock's trending up? The buyers. Okay, where is the buying pressure coming in from? Well, right here, 1050. Now there is a little resistance at like 1066, about 19,000 shares. And then, big resistance at 11 bucks, about 46,000. So, that's a great game plan. If this could really go up to 11 from 1050, clean 50-cent move, that's what my thought was. You might say, well, this is resistance first, 18,000 shares here, right? It showed up. Well, that is where I will at least kind of, show you in number form. How big is 1050 compared to the other prices? Well, at 1050, there's about 92,000 shares total that got filled, total. But look at the discrepancy, the difference between the green and the red there. So clearly, like 90 to 95% of that volume bar is green, which means about 90 to 95% of the 92,000 here is what I would consider buying pressure. Let me ask you a quick question, folks. I want all of us to answer. And if you're not answering, I could tell you might be stepping away from your computer. That's fine. A lot of people stay logged in as they kind of do separate things throughout the day. Or you might be sleeping behind the wheel. I got an annoying voice. I put people to sleep. No problem. I get it. But though, what's a larger number? I want all of us to answer here at least. What's the larger number? 19,000 or 92,000? I want you to tell me there, folks. Who wants to be a millionaire? It's the $1 million question. What is the larger number? 19,000 or 92,000? Does anyone want to use a lifeline? Call a friend. Everyone here immediately, of course, saying 92,000, right? Thank you so much, by the way. Got Bill, Mark, Roger, Dwayne, Lee, Anna, Nabil, Brian, Barb, Sharon. Who else? Got Celeste earlier. So I heard just before, and Michael, Farzad, and Tim, Margaret, Uday. All of us appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Absolutely. 92,000. Now, not going to have you answer this. I'll just do it here myself. But 92,000 is even, double the size of this, quite literally, right? So, am I so concerned about this here at 1066? No. If this is breaking over this level, and if it's going to play nice from this level, most importantly, meaning if it stays over this clean from resistance as support, then I should be getting a better leg up. It's already been fighting this level for about 30 minutes. Something's got to give. And I mean that in a great way, because remember, I wasn't like, harping on this trade at 9:47 in the morning, 10 in the morning, even 10:15. I was starting to look back at it and just, I think we shouted it out once when it first popped, but just to say, I didn't really get myself stuck in this trade with any like false breakouts, any little right place, wrong time type of moves. Maybe you set a conservative stop, it takes you out. And, you just kind of get a bad taste in your mouth from that move and you don't go back to it. And if that stock runs without you, that's an even, worse feeling in your stomach, right? We've all been there. I'm just telling you that wasn't me here. So where you actually see this thing chop and go sideways and it's been struggling, well, hey, with higher lows, and the more times this keeps nipping and testing, the buyers were hoping to see you win the battle. So from there, I jumped in this trade once it broke over 1050. My fill was at 1052. Then the icing on the cake, no pun intended, but kind of pun intended. I mean, look at the size of that order. It's a dark red line, 50,000 shares popping up out of thin air on the bid. So I took the trade because we had buying pressure as the stock was pushing over that resistance again, 1050. But thankfully, this was like, a gift. Well, what happens when there's even more buying pressure on that trade, at least, from that level? You have a new 50,000 shares showing up. There's your run. I got out before we started Traders Talk. I was going to go over this in the workshop here to begin anyway. I got filled right at like 11 or like 10.99 once it started to pull back. I had the iceberg here, wanted to see if it would push up off of it. And once it broke below it, I just got filled. So I closed my trade out already, but this has been a great move so far. And this is not our first time trading the stock. This is absolutely not our first time trading the stock. We've been on top of this for, I mean, how long now, Tim? For a little while. It's one of your favorite stocks, at least. And I'm sure a few of us did well on it from earlier today, if not just historically speaking. So let me just see. You, Amy. Taking a look on our chat board right now. Yeah, I mean, even as of March 6th, what was that, on Friday? I mean, one of our students, George, was talking about it. He said, I'll even show it to you here. He's one of our diamond students, George, and just kind of showing you here just what he said on Friday afternoon. So, you, Amy, US Anatomy Miner, strong today and looks like it might be getting ready for a larger breakout over the next few weeks. Incredible, observation, George, and call out. I hope you killed it on that trade. But I'm just pointing out that this is not some flash in a pan type of move. It's not just some random stock XYZ that we just called out. This stock has been on a tear for us back last year to begin this year. So it's just a good sideless stock, right? I mean, for instance, I know Bill called out the Jobby trade this morning, or looking for the pop. If that made the same push, I'd be saying the same exact thing about Jobby. It's just a great sideless stock, and anytime it gets the legs to make a higher high, then we're going to focus on it. Now, most importantly, why this stock when there's thousands of stocks that were looking good from the end of last year, and there's thousands of stocks that popped and ran for us last year like this did. I mean, you got the quantums, you got the AIs, you got the Bitcoin stocks, the nuclears, the US storage stocks, energy storage, that is. There's just so many different hot sectors. Why this one? Most importantly, folks, right now, real-time live, just answer this for me on the right side of my screen. What's the spread? Right now, real-time live, what's the spread? 1 cent. It's a penny spread. Look at the size of the orders on the book here. They're, at least fairly, decent, over 1,000 shares for a large number of these orders on the bid, as well as on the ask. And when you kind of give it the eyeball test here, that spread, like everyone's saying, is a penny. Well, it's not opening up. So that makes it 100% tradable in terms of like volume and criteria normally. Now, hey, the question is there a good trend on the day today? Right? That's what separates this from other trades. If you remember from the last week or two, ONDS, RCAT, a lot of those stocks were moving well. Well, guess what? They're moving up well right now. I mean, shit, this RCAT trade might be ripe for the taking at 15 even here. I say that because, well, why? I mean, it's up today. It's trending up. Who's winning the battle? Buyers, right? Just like we all answered earlier. All right, well, where are the buyers winning the battle from? Well, look at this big old volume spike here. Look at this big green spike that we just said we'll kind of, nickname that as buying pressure. Well, I'm sure the first time that RCAT tested $15 today as resistance, it hit, it held, and pulled back. First test, best test, like we always say. Now, though, the more that this can keep nipping and testing resistance across a smaller period of time, I feel a lot better about the eventual breakout to have the buyers win the battle. So let me show you a book map. We'll see if there's resistance at 15. If there was a resistance at 15, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. There 100% was, and I would drop the G word again and guarantee it. Just got to have this load up here. Yeah, who wants to be a millionaire? I got a little Jeopardy music here today. All right, what do we got? Yeah, resistance at 15, right there from the morning. Hit it once, fail. Here we go again. Let's see if it can keep testing it, though. The more it keeps nipping and testing, we should be getting that better move. Now, though, I will just say, let's go back to last week. Wasn't really a ton of great buying pressure going into the close from Thursday. This was, you had a nice big spike though at 4 o'clock, probably a big closing bell print. This is Friday, where it squeezed up to 18 and back down. So for two separate breaks over 15 and it ran up, 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 you'd figure that this would be a good support level. You'd figure that this has a good case to try and flip into support. Well, obviously, A, it didn't. You know that. It dropped. It broke right below that thing. But B, wait a second here. I don't think this went under and over, did it? I think this just broke under and stayed under. So in terms of catching a falling knife, this is the pure definition of such. I mean, I'm sure this would be like a great setup to look for a bounce, look to have this go under and over. This went under and it just dropped. So there's literally no entry here from yesterday. This was in the morning. And then real quick, if everyone could just answer this for me as always, when this breaks below big support and it tanks, what are we expecting big support to flip back into? At least initially. So that takes us back here to real time. And I do believe that as long as this keeps with higher lows, this does have a good chance of trying to at least go back up towards 16 today or even higher perhaps. Let's see, that closing bell print from this was on this was on Thursday. Yeah, Thursday last week. So notice the close price on this candle. That's what we kind of showed on Bookmap at the end of the day on that Thursday. 15.08 technically, $15.08. So that was your close price, at least from that Wednesday that we saw, that Thursday, I'm sorry, that we saw on Bookmap. So I'd really just kind of say, you know what, the more it kind of keeps stabbing this area collectively, we'll get our better move. It might not be today because this hit resistance at first at like 11:52. It's been almost an hour later and it's retesting it. If it drops back down again and then builds back up later on today, that might take us until like 3 o'clock. You know what I mean? So this might be a longer drawn out move than just today. This might be tomorrow. This might be Thursday, etc. So I love the level. I love the fact that it held initially as resistance. That makes all the sense in the world. The 15.08 closing print from Thursday last week, that's going to basically be extra resistance to the 15 level. But listen, the more it keeps getting attacked, then as long as it remains over it as support afterwards, I feel better about that next leg back up higher, get back up to the 16s, etc. Now, this is a drone stock, so it's the same type of move as you're seeing on like a ONDS type of trade. Same, but different. They're in the same sector, totally different companies, though, different financials, different CEOs, everything. So I will say at least that they are moving relatively similar, just in the overall trend up. A lot of choppiness of late, the last week or two, a lot of sideways and wicks up, down. So this isn't necessarily the greatest graph over the last couple weeks, but long term, it's been just a beast. This thing has been incredible. So right now, just comparing ONDS to the RCAT, does this have as easy to see levels? If the answer is no, then I'm probably not going to be as incentivized. I'd rather trade RCAT then, right? Or UAMI, right? Look at the UAMI trades. The same thing as RCAT, at least, just retesting resistance where we had big volume getting filled, big spike, right side, right? I can't go back to last week on the ONDS like I did on RCAT, but I will just point out you have a larger resistance here at 1050. There's not really much that I would find as like big of a level to utilize. 15 on RCAT looks more visible here. $11 here on the right side looks just much more visible here for you, Amy. If it's easy to see, then it's something I will feel confident in using. Does that mean that this can't go up? Not at all. Listen, rising tide is going to lift most boats. So if RCAT pops and the other drone stocks pop, this is going with it. Does this have as easy to see levels right now for me to press the buy button right now? No, there's a larger resistance at 1050. That's easy to see. RCAT, the level is more for the taking around the 15 to 1508, and the UAMI, well, right there from the 11. So I have no problem missing some moves. Who the hell cares? As long as the trades that I'm taking have easy to see levels, the money to be made should be relatively. I've been cursing a lot here. This trader's talk. The money to be made is generally very easy in that case. If the levels are easy to see, then the money to come by should also be, relatively speaking, easy to come by. Sharon, real quick, and we're gonna get the email questions just actually next. I wanted to get to that actually sooner. I yapped too long. So Sharon with a thought, just you, Amy, on level 3, someone keeps laddering it up. 14,000 shares at least. Oh, no. I see kind of maybe, well, it's kind of probably extra volume on the order book aside from what Bookmap shows, but there's something here on the ask at 1115 and 1120, but that's kind of tiny volume in relation to all of the big volume that got filled at the 11 level, right? Look on the far right side of this. So, that's kind of where I ask myself as a trader, like, how big is big? How much priority and concern should I have in this price compared to the other price? So don't get me wrong, it could still hold as a resistance, or there might be more volume showing up here that could stack the selling side more. But though, at least I'm going to have more faith in the fact that this was fighting resistance at 11 bucks here earlier. So as long as it at least stays over it as support, your next resistance was at 1176. It was, and that was about 40,000 there, Sharon. So that looks pretty damn big. But past tense was. That got pulled. That order got removed from the book. So what happens when selling pressure gets deleted, gets removed instantaneously from the order book? Think of it just very simply. What happens when you have an opposing force or resistance that lets go or stops trying? Then it should be easier for you to kind of control and show strength and push the stock, in this case, up. All right, so let me get to some email questions as we finish this up here, folks. 1 second. All right. So how about this? I was going to say to my student Steve here, I was going to say I will definitely try and help you out myself, but I think Steve meant this, in fact, for the students here, like kind of to ask the students. So I wanted to save it for Traders Talk, and knowing that everyone would be here right now, I'd rather just ask. Had a student asking if anyone has Thinkorswim/Schwab, uh, if they had contacted them about signing a waiver to allow high volatility stocks to trade, and if there was an outcome for that. I'm actually just going to post this in the I'll post in the trading call out tab right here. It's right there. So that's the exact message I got from my student Steve. So more or less, if anyone that has a Schwab/Thinkorswim account, if you had to sign a waiver to allow your account to be able to trade some of these high volatile, low float, big percent gainer type of stocks, let Steve know and what the outcome was. That's a great question, Tim. My assumption would be yes, that Schwab may have asked him to, or maybe otherwise, if he heard from other traders about it, he was just kind of asking, see if anyone here knew of anything. You know what I mean? So it could have been the such. Bill has not received anything of that yet. Uday doesn't know, about the high volatile thing, but he raises a ticket with them with the support for each time he gets kind of locked out. I think he's saying. Yeah, but like I think he's asking about an actual waiver or something that he has to sign, like to give him the ability to trade all those crazy stocks. Brad is saying there is a request that you can make at least. So it's not a matter of Schwab contacting the retail trader. It's a matter of the retail trader contacting Schwab saying, hey, let me do this. And from that point, then they'll proceed. I believe that's the case from what Brad is saying. Yeah, I mean, listen, different brokers are going to have some issues with not just allowing you to trade some of the crazy stocks, but let's just take it in the simple sense of every broker has control of what they allow and don't allow. That simply includes inventory to short stocks, right? Just think of it this way in the simple sense of shorting. Interactive Brokers has a different inventory to short compared to TradeStation. TradeStation has a different inventory to short than Thinkorswim. So just because you can't short on one platform doesn't mean that you can't universally. Now, with that, I want to point out that when it comes to like security and trying to quote unquote look out for the clients, brokers at their discretion will say, hey, the stock's too volatile. We're going to restrict trading from retailers. That's been the case. I've had it on TradeStation. I've had it on Fidelity. I've had it on Webull. I've had it on Robinhood. I've had it on every other one you could think of. Now, the only thing I'll say is that from the end of last year to the beginning of this year, something had to have changed internally with Schwab/Thinkorswim, because that's been happening a bit more frequent there. So I just want to let everyone know that's basically been the case. But Brad's giving some intel right now to our students here. One of our students, Brad, he's saying that he called the main trade support and asked for them to put in a request. It took about a week for them to get back to him. That shouldn't be a week wait there. That's kind of sketchy. Not sketchy, but that's not great customer support, I'd say. Otherwise, though, Brad, thank you very much for just sharing your experience at least. Bill says, and give up the fun of learning a stock on the move. I've been watching, can't be traded via internet. So you could always make it a learning experience, Bill, right? I love that you at least think of it that way. Of course, emotionally and as a trader, not being able to trade those stocks and seeing them just rip face and just go crazy upward, it's frustrating. It definitely is. But you could look to turn a negative into a positive by at least asking, like, okay, it stinks I can't make money on this one, but there had to have been a pattern here that worked out for this trade that I'm sure is going to work out for other stocks too. So, as long as you kind of reverse engineer that chart and ask, well, how did it get from point A to point B? The more that you answer that question yourself, it's going to be easier for you to pull the trigger, and at least on trades that you're able to take. But otherwise, that's kind of the purpose of this workshop, Traders Talk, where we have the best outlet each and every Tuesday to kind of go over all these trades from A to Z. All right. So, Steve, thank you for your question. And if anyone has any extra intel like Brad has brought up, then definitely, send it in the chat board as we've been talking about here since. So thank you, Brad, for your comments too. From Tim, here we go. We're going to wrap up at least here coming up. I got to jump on a coaching call with one of our students actually that is joining us live right now. So I'll appreciate his patience. Just we'll go an extra 1 or 2 minutes here. So Tim had a quick question regarding gaps. When a stock gaps and then at some point gaps over or under the original gap, how do you play that? Is that gap considered filled or is it not filled? Or all right, so kind of a funky scenario there, Tim. I know for a fact that there's a stock this morning that had that. I need more coffee. I forgot off the top of my head what the ticker was. Do you have one in mind, Tim? Was it the HIMS? Nah. I mean, yeah, kind of, because gapped up overnight here, the Friday into the Monday, and then what happened was it kind of, gapped over this year, right? This could be a good example. Now, I'll just point out that with gap fills, this gap, by the time the market is going to open up on this candle, it's going to be filled. Because essentially what you're doing is you're going to fill the empty void from the close of or from the high of this price to the close here otherwise. Now, of course, part of that is going to be based on a gap, but by the time the market opens, technically this would then be filled to a good extent. Now, that leads me to say that, hey, this might look to continue to pull back over time. It's a very heavily shorted stock, not really a great chart, right? Like we talked about. So what happens if the sellers take over again? Well, once we see this low get taken out, no, pardon me. Once we see this close get taken out, then we will then have a new gap to begin. So there could be a few different gaps you could play. You just don't want to get yourself too gap crazy, meaning in the sense of when this popped up overnight here, I'm not really thinking about this as much anymore. This will be my focal point in terms of like gap fill, or, you know, if it ends up holding afloat and eventually going back up, work off of it from there. All right, folks. So, hey, we are going to wrap up at least for the time being. So, hey, keep in mind, if you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc., have a couple of us just joining us here today. As always, Leda, appreciate you simulcasting, one of our students on the YouTubes as well. And we got DK England. Great to have you here as well from earlier. So, hope you're still tuning in. And with that, hey, we invite you to join us directly inside our live trading room. If you wanted to do so, go right down to the link scrolling down below in blue, ctu.co/trial. But for this week, more important matters, quite frankly. Coming up tomorrow, we have our Cyber Expo event, 2-day huge trading conference and event with some of the biggest educators, analysts, investors, and traders throughout the entire industry. And that's not myself. I mean, that literally is myself, but I'm definitely not one of the biggest educators, gurus, analysts in the industry. Not that hot-headed. I appreciate having the chance to be on this platform, at least with some of the best, though. Andrew Keene, Jeff Gibby, Greg Capra, Jeff Hirsch, Christopher Mullen, of course, Fausto. But, of course, even from there, Tom Sasanov coming up tomorrow. So register so you can have the chance to attend this webinar coming on up. So first name, email, phone number, that's all you got to do to claim your free ticket. If you're not able to join live, at least if you register, you will have the chance to get the recording instantly afterwards. So we just posted that in the comment section right there too. Appreciate that, Rich. Thank you. So as an actual comment in our live stream right there, you can go right down to that link, cybertradingexpo.com, to sign up. All right, folks. But again, we'll be back later on today, this afternoon, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, just for the afternoon meeting. And then we'll go from there, folks. All right. Talk to you all soon.